In the early 1940s, the world watched in disbelief. One by one, the mighty colonial powers of the West were falling. The British Empire humiliated in Singapore. The Dutch swept from Indonesia. The Americans crushed at Pearl Harbor. And behind it all, a small island nation in the Pacific that had transformed itself into a global superpower in just a few decades. This is the story of how Japan, a country once isolated by its own walls, rose to challenge the greatest empires on Earth, and almost won. Stick with me, because the turning point in this story will surprise you. Let's rewind. For over 2 centuries, Japan kept its doors shut to the outside world. Foreign trade was limited, Western influence was feared, but all that changed in 1853 when American warships under Commodore Matthew Perry steamed into Tokyo Bay, demanding Japan open up. This encounter shattered centuries of isolation, and just 15 years later, Japan underwent one of the most radical transformations in history, the Meiji Restoration. Feudalism was abolished. Samurai gave up their swords. Western science, engineering, and military tactics were imported almost overnight. And within a generation, Japan had industrialized, building railways, shipyards, factories, and a modern army. Then, in 1905, the unthinkable happened. Japan went to war with the Russian Empire and won. At sea and on land, the Japanese crushed the Tsar's forces. For the first time, an Asian power had defeated a European empire in modern warfare. The world took notice. Now confident, Japan expanded its influence. It annexed Korea in 1910, turning it into a colony. In 1931, it invaded Manchuria, a region rich in resources vital for fueling its growing ambitions. But this wasn't just about land. Japan's elite believed it had a divine destiny to rule Asia, free it from Western colonizers, and build what they called the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. In reality, it was an empire, and an increasingly brutal one. Behind the slogans of unity and liberation were forced labor camps, massacres, and occupation. Still, by the late 1930s, Japan's military was among the most powerful in the world. And in 1940, as Europe descended into chaos, Japan saw its moment. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. The shock was total. Within hours, the United States Pacific Fleet was crippled. But Pearl Harbor was just the beginning. In a matter of months, Japan unleashed a lightning-fast assault across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. The Philippines fell. Malaya fell. Singapore, Britain's fortress in Asia, surrendered with over 80,000 Allied troops taken prisoner. The Dutch East Indies crumbled. By mid-1942, Japan controlled one of the largest empires in history, stretching from the jungles of Burma to the beaches of New Guinea and deep into China. It had taken on the United States, Britain, the Netherlands, China, and the Soviet Union, and for a time, it looked unstoppable. But there was a problem. Japan's early success was no accident. It had been planning this war for years. Its navy was modern, its pilots well-trained, and its troops hardened by years of fighting in China. It used speed, surprise, and overwhelming force. Its soldiers believed surrender was shameful and would fight to the death. And critically, the West underestimated Japan. Racist assumptions about inferior Asians meant Allied commanders were caught off guard when Japan fought like, and in some cases better than, their Western counterparts. At one point, Japanese planners hoped the United States would sue for peace, shocked by early defeats, unwilling to fight a long war. That almost happened. But then came the turning point. In June 1942, Japan set its sights on Midway, a tiny atoll in the Central Pacific. If captured, it would threaten Hawaii and open a path toward full dominance of the Pacific. But unknown to Japanese commanders, the Americans had broken their naval codes. They knew what was coming, and at Midway, the U.S. Navy ambushed the Japanese fleet. 4 of Japan's most powerful aircraft carriers were sunk. Thousands of experienced sailors and pilots were lost. Japan would never recover. From there, it was a long, brutal decline. The Allies began island hopping, capturing territory step by step. Each island was a bloodbath. Japan's refusal to surrender turned every battle into a last stand. By 1945, Japan's cities were in ruins. Firebombs reduced Tokyo to ashes, and then came Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The empire had taken on the world, and now it was broken. In just 50 years, Japan had risen from isolation to industrial superpower, challenged the West, and built a vast empire. But it was built on violence, nationalism, and illusion. And when it collapsed, it did so in fire. After the war, Japan was occupied by the United States. Its emperor, once seen as a living god, was reduced to a ceremonial figurehead. Its constitution was rewritten, and Japan transformed again, this time into a peaceful, democratic nation. But the legacy of the empire still echoes in Korea, in China, in the Pacific Islands, and even in Japan itself, where the memory of war is still debated today. The Japanese Empire took on the world, and for a brief moment it almost won. But in doing so, it paid the ultimate price. History rarely moves in straight lines, but when it does, when a nation rewrites its fate in a single lifetime, the world never forgets. Japan's fall marked the end of one of the most dramatic empires in modern history. But it wasn't the first to rise and collapse in spectacular fashion. If you want to see how another mighty empire came crashing down, check out my video, The Day Rome Fell. What really happened? It's a deep dive into betrayal, invasion, and the final gasp of an empire that once ruled the known world. Click the link on screen or in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.